My lacrosse teammates said they could hear it from the 50-yard line. Pop! That was the sound of me tearing my ACL. I wasn't thinking about how my college athletic career just took a sharp turn or even the amount of throbbing pain I was in. Instead, I turned to my coach and said, "This wasn't supposed to happen. I don't have time for this." As if I had a choice. But seriously, look at my calendar. Where did I have time for surgery, rehab, and post-op appointments? The standard recovery time for an ACL is 9 months. I assumed that since my doctor said it would be 9 months, that my knee would listen to the doctor. Yeah, that's not how recovery works, Hannah. I became obsessed with hitting every post-op goal on the correct timeline. And when I didn't, I felt like an utter failure. I thought that I had to do more to recover, when all I needed to do was less. A couple days after surgery, you could visibly see my right quad muscles dissipate. I asked my physical therapist if this was normal. He said that this was a result of my old muscles breaking down, so I could build them back up. I didn't know it yet, but this would serve as an analogy for how I needed to break down my obsession with hustling and busyness and replace it with healthier habits and boundaries. I'm Hannah, a type A oldest daughter and self-appointed parent to my 2 younger siblings. I plan my days out to the minute, color-coded, of course. I make plans 4 weeks in advance. I have my own podcast. I'm literally giving a TEDx talk right now. You could say I was born to hustle. And to some degree I was. But to some degree, it was instilled in me from my environment. My environment being America. Ventani defines hustle culture as pushing individuals to work continuously, often sacrificing their health and social life. This concept stems from the belief that success can only be achieved through relentless dedication to work. Think back to your 8-year-old self. What did you want to be when you grew up? I wanted to be a dolphin trainer. But at no point in my childhood was I dreaming of 80-hour work weeks and chronic burnout. So, what makes a 24-year-old girl with 2 years of actual work experience qualified to be talking about the harms of hustle culture? The thing is, I am the exact type of person that hustle culture feeds on. My freshman year of high school, I verbally committed to Georgetown University for lacrosse. I took every AP, played a sport every season, and was on student government every year in high school. In college, I committed 40-plus hours a week to lacrosse, was enrolled in 5 academic classes on the pre-med track. I worked a part-time job, and somewhere in there, I ate, slept, and had a social life. I graduated college in May of 2023. By July, I had started my first 9-to-5, and in August, I started graduate classes. I am the poster child for hustle culture. The lifestyle that preaches doing anything to reach your professional goals, often at the expense of your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. And this lifestyle really worked for me. Until it didn't. My thoughts became senseless. My chest grew tight and my breath short. People sounded muffled, and I felt like I was moving in slow motion. I was having my first panic attack. I started having panic attacks my junior year of college. My anxiety was stemming from the constant pressure to do or produce. Ironically, I was resistant to therapy at first because I thought I didn't have time for it. I'd run myself through these cycles of never feeling like I was doing or producing enough. So I'd stack my schedule, and then I'd get so overwhelmed with all that I had to do that eventually I'd have another panic attack or grow extremely burnt out. My mom has always said that I have 2 speeds, sprinting and sleeping. So why couldn't I find a middle speed? I began to realize that I was very attached to having a jam-packed calendar. I found myself thinking it was just as important to be productive after my 9-to-5 as much as it was during. You see that vacancy on Tuesday night? Well, I could start that self-help book that everyone's raving about, or I could start a 401k, whatever that is. You see, I'd rushed to fill it, fearful that I was wasting time. I used to think to myself, Hannah, why can't you just stop creating stress for yourself? Through therapy, though, once I actually started making time for it, I began to unpack that this wasn't all self-inflicted. Yes, I was the one adding to my never-ending to-do list in Google Calendar, but I am not the founder of this lifestyle that is obsessed with busyness. Our work cultures and social systems have instilled in us that more is better. Rise and grind. No days off. You can sleep when you're dead. Or work hard, play harder. It's not my fault that I view productivity as external deliverables. And I was beginning to realize that my productivity obsession was not just with work or side hustles. I was becoming too aware of the number of happy hours and birthday parties I attended. My social life was also becoming a numbers game. I was out to dinner with some of my closest friends when I noticed we were trying to one-up each other with how busy we were. I got an icky feeling that we were in competition for who worked more hours this week. It sounded like an auction. Do I have 40 hours? I have 40 hours. Do I have 50 hours? I have 50 hours. Do I have 60 hours? I have 60 hours. Do I have 75 hours? 75 hours? 75 hours sold. It dawned on me that our time commitment to work was a sign of pedigree. More hours worked put you on a non-existent leaderboard. A quicker promotion made you more worthy. And disregarding work-life boundaries made you tougher. The lines between work and life were not blurred. They were non-existent. Not only did I not have time for anything, but neither did some of my closest friends. I lived in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania this past summer. I was conducting my scholarly research thesis for my master's degree. I had a general understanding that other countries view Americans as too obsessed with their work, but it took me moving 7,000 miles away from home to realize that I was one of those Americans. I was shocked to learn that businesses don't open until 9 a.m. What was I supposed to do until 9 a.m.? I was even more shocked to learn that people leave the office at 3 p.m. What was I supposed to do if I needed a response between 3 and 5 p.m.? Frankly, I was embarrassed with my productivity obsession when my supervisor frequently reminded me to eat lunch, or suggested that I break for lunch with my colleagues in the canteen rather than at my desk. I didn't have time for this, but was it that obvious? Yes, of course it was. But I was the one not respecting their work-life boundaries. I was wrongfully assuming that everyone else should be addicted to their work because that's what I was taught. I kept getting frustrated when I was told to pole pole, which means slow down in Swahili. Wasn't anyone else concerned with my self-inflicted deadlines? No. And no teacher in elementary school was telling us that we have to work 80 hours a week or use all free time for a side hustle and self-improvement. We are taught from the systems in place. Take AP courses. Secure that internship. Be multifaceted. Have a side hustle. Read that self-help book. And have 8 years of work experience and a PhD for an entry-level job. But do it all with no universal health care, no paid maternity leave, 11 days of paid time off, 3 days of bereavement, inflation, a terrible housing market, and higher taxes so the 1% can get a cut. Zendesk defines a country's productivity by GDP per capita with hours worked. So, what do you think is the most productive country in the world? The US? No. It's Luxembourg. But surely the US is in the top 5. No. What about the top 10? No. The United States ranks 12th in terms of productivity. Data from OECD and the World Bank shows that the United States is working more hours than any of the top 20 most productive countries. So, what does Luxembourg have that the US doesn't? Universal healthcare, 40-hour work week maximum, 5 weeks of paid time off, and mandatory maternity leave 2 months before and 3 months after delivery. Luxembourg shows that it prioritizes the well-being of its citizens. A 2023 Gallup poll found that workplaces prioritizing mental health see 13% higher productivity. Employees are 2.3 times less likely to report feeling stressed, and there is a 2.6 times higher likelihood of reduced absenteeism. Meanwhile, 2/3 of Americans experience work-related burnout. Not only are we less productive, but we are actively hurting our own well-being. And it just doesn't have to be like this. We don't have to continue working within this culture just because this is how things have always been done. Establishing boundaries does not make us weak. It makes us stronger for wanting better. My mom constantly reminds me, quality over quantity. She usually means this in the context of friendships, but it applies in this context as well. Through therapy and conversations with family and friends, I began to realize that I don't have to keep living in a constant state of panic and to-do lists. I can actually choose quality of life over the quantity of things I produce. Sure, I'm not producing as much as I once was, but I am much more content with what I am producing. And my nervous system is much more regulated too. I haven't had a panic attack in 3 years. Truth is, I am still learning how to hustle less. I still find myself overscheduling and extending myself. I still find my nervous system heightened when I hear a Teams notification. However, I've also noticed that I'm trying. I still have ambitions and goals, but I no longer equate my value as a person to my level of productivity. Productivity still includes accomplishing work-related tasks, but it also includes things like moving my body daily, taking time to read a news article, or calling a loved one. I make time for this. The biggest lesson I've learned in the past year is that 2 things can be true at the same time. We can still have goals, but we don't have to sacrifice our well-being in the process. We can still hustle while doing less, and we can still accomplish while also taking the advice of my Tanzanian colleagues to slow down, or to pole. Thank you.